Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Noxcast, your Equinox News Recap podcast. I'm Nathan Hope. I'm the managing executive editor of the Equinox.
I'm Chloe Erno. I'm the current news editor.
First of all, I just wanted to say I hope everyone watching had a great summer. I have a couple announcements regarding Noxcast, some exciting stuff. For those watching on YouTube, you might be able to see behind me, there's these new soundproofing foam panels and some upgraded LEDs. So things look a lot nicer over here on the video side of things, and we got some fancy new cameras as well. So thank you to our journalism department chair Julio for upgrading our equipment and sort of making everything look even better. I did also want to mention we got word from the College Media Association, which is one of the national organizations for college media. They released their list of finalists for awards, and Noxcast, this podcast that you're watching or listening to right now, made it as a finalist for Best Podcast in Division 3. And that was the episode with, we had President Treadwell on and discussed the election. So thank you to everyone who watched and has supported up to this point, especially last year in our inaugural year of this. It's been really exciting, and hopefully that's the first of many awards to come. Just thanks, everybody, for making this thing possible. But with that, just wanted to get straight into the recap. Starting off with news, we have a new director of admissions. So this is a story we've been following for some time, also because for the past year, the director of admissions previous to this one, Peg Richmond, had occupied the position for quite a long time, and she had announced her retirement, and Keene State kind of kept her on just a contract in order to sort of keep that work going before filling the position. And over the summer, a hire was made with Sarah Russell, who's a USNH alum, so that's cool. And very important position, and it's kind of coming at a time where there's it's very tumultuous in higher ed, to say the least, and to see someone coming in with, some fresh ideas and some perspective as an alum as well, trying to boost the numbers at a time where so many institutions are seeing declining enrollment. I think it's a really interesting story, and it's really, I kind of just have to give some props to being willing to take the helm at such an important position for the college. If you wanted to talk a little bit, Chloe, about your perspective on this.
Yeah, of course. I think when someone who's been here at Keene for so long steps away, it's always a bit of a sad situation. But I think Sarah Russell seems like she's really excited for the role. I think she's going to do a great job going forward. Our senior reporter, Ryan Pacheco, got a lot of good info about her, got a very informative interview where she talked about this and her into depth on her perspective about it. And I think she's going to do a great job stepping forward. With the stuff that we have heard at news about the enrollment numbers and admissions, it's an interesting time for her to take up the helm, but I think that she's going to do a good job going forward.
Yeah, it was exciting to get some new faces on campus, and again, it's one of the more critical roles that Keene State has been looking to fill for quite some time. So go check out Ryan Pacheco's article, either in the paper or in online, because it's really interesting to see that new perspective. Jumping into student life now, our webmaster now, Charlotte, did an article where she collected some first year's thoughts on sort of the first week back, first week back for us, but first week at all for them. It's been a while since I've been a first year. I'm a senior now, so it's very interesting to me to see sort of the differences in perspective and how things are at Keene State now compared to when I was a first year back in fall of 2022. COVID was still, near like the tail end of restrictions and stuff. They had some masking in like my first semester that they had at some periods. So it was a lot of rebuilding when I came here. And it's hard to immediately like find your community or find your place on campus. But we have, such a large amount of new first years. The, enrollment numbers was another story that we had done in this paper, but they're looking, pretty good for Keene State, especially compared to some other institutions. And, it's very important to stay tapped into how they're actually feeling rather than just looking at the numbers. Like, we need to keep these people here for the next, few years or however long it takes them to complete their degree. So it's not just getting them here, it's making them stay and making them make Keene State a place where they want to stay. And I just wanted to also give some thoughts myself on advice I would give to first years. First of all, I have to plug the fact that, at the Equinox, we do all sorts of fun stuff like writing, photography, art, video, audio, you name it. So, I found my place on campus through the Equinox. I am so grateful for it and how much it's helped me, basically helped me land a summer internship at the Keene Sentinel. I met so many of my friends at the Equinox. But, it doesn't have to be with us either. It could also be with other clubs on campus or sports. So that's my advice really is to get yourself out there, get involved. Don't just go to classes and then go back to your dorm. It's really like isolating. And I think, it's hard to make friends just through class, I think, in a lot of instances, because, you're looking at a lot of like lecture based classes where you don't really have time to talk with people as much. So, I think it's just important to look at those extracurricular activities where, you can find people with shared interest to you and people that want to, support you and sort of, look out for you in that way. It's, just get out there, get involved. That's my advice. Chloe, I didn't know if you had some stuff you wanted to say.
And I mean, speaking just as a sophomore who started here last fall, like, even over the course of this year, I've seen so many changes on campus, and I can tell that the current freshmen are going to be having a different experience than me. I mean, we have the keen.edu website that looks completely different now. We have completely different dining hours and things that are changing. And I think my advice to freshmen would just to keep pushing through it. I know from experience those first couple weeks are probably the hardest for them in adapting to this new situation. But I agree completely. I think getting out there, joining clubs was a good way for me to get into the King community, meet new people, and I think it's just a lot healthier to go and join these clubs and organizations because that's what college is all about.
Yeah, definitely. So that's your pitch. You gotta get out there. And we were at the student involvement fair today. We're recording this on Friday, but lots of excitement all around. I've talked to some other people at other tables, and glad to see a seemingly pretty vibrant and group of new students here who are willing to take that step and get out. It's great to see. Um, Moving in now to our editorial. Speaking of some changes on campus, over the course of the summer, there was a pretty significant budget cut to the university system of New Hampshire, and sort of as a result of that, there's going to be some changes to campus, and the administration at Keene State has sort of made it a point to talk about how they want to not affect the student experience as much as possible, keep things kind of consistent. But in the dining side of things, a change that students kind of immediately I've seen, especially returning students who knew what it was like before. There's been reductions in dining hours, places where different dining locations. So, for example, Lloyd's Marketplace, which is more of your grab and go food items, they're closing earlier. They're closing at like 7 p.m. And Hoot and Scoot as well, which also has grab and go food options and is home to like Sushi Do. They are also experiencing reduced hours. The DC is open later on some days, but they're also not open for breakfast on like the weekends, for example. So across the board, it's a net loss in hours. And so we did our editorial about this, where we discussed sort of the ramifications of that. And we've had quite a few editorials on dining. I know you know that, Chloe, even within just the past year, but there's various different issues, and I think this one kind of hits on a unique issue, which I know our webmaster Charlotte did an opinion on this before as well, about late night dining kind of being a thing that we would like to see, but also knowing that that might not be in the cards. I mean, you saw at UNH they closed an entire one of their dining halls. They took away their 24-hour options that they had that we had previously kind of praised. Yeah, it's hard. It's a little bit hard to see, because there's food insecurity on college campuses is an issue that a lot of people know about, and the fact that you're required to get a meal plan, and a lot of students don't really see the value given back to them that they're putting into it, that they kind of have to. Lloyd's used to be like really popular at the late hours. Lots of athletes get out of their practices and they want to get something to go really quick. I know from experience when I went there late at night, there would be a whole flock of people coming in the late hours, and we sort of talked about. So even if this is like a cost consideration, I mean, like wouldn't it be less cost for labor to have just one cashier and who can sell the grab and go food versus the DC, which requires significantly more labor in terms of people manning each station and people being there for like check in and everything. So we just sort of expressed that we're disappointed in the change, and we think that there should be an examination of if there's really a better way to do this. And I know we also did a piece in Student Life where we talked to students as well to get their opinion on this. So check that out. But Chloe, I didn't know what you wanted to say about this.
I think for us, speaking as people who work long hours for the Equinox in the Student Center, Lloyd's was a very accessible food source for us, and for a lot of other people who work late or have sports into the night. And I think taking that away is definitely a detriment to these students, and it's robbing them of a source of food that they could use consistently. We spoke to it a bit in the editorial, but Lloyd's has a much more consistent variety of food, and it gets more positive student feedback than the food at the DC. And so I think taking away this source that people generally like compared to the DC is just not a good choice by the dining team, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and then we also sort of touched on the editorial as well, talking about how if those options aren't available at those late hours, students are going to spend their money elsewhere off campus, which means less money going into KSC dining. So we figure, it's kind of like a questionable financial decision in our opinion as an e-board. Um, just I don't know. It's sort of is in line with a lot of what they've been trying to do. They've talked about this also KC Dining within the past year about trying to prioritize the DC and getting more people to flock over there. Um, but it's hard to sort of square that with just the student opinion generally of the quality of food in the DC not being up to par, which we've done plenty of articles getting student opinion about that as well. So that's a lot of times not just us speaking, but it's hard, and we hope that, as always, that student feedback is centered in any changes, and that there could be more opportunities for feedback and to sort of see a more responsive KC dining team who wants to hear and actually take into account some of the feedback that students have been outspoken about in regard to these changes. With limited hours being the most recent. That leads us into a little bit of a lighter note here. Our A&E top story: new film equipment manager and a new graphic design adjunct faculty. So this was the film equipment manager position last year. There was two film student alumni who sort of handled the duties of that for the previous year, and it's talked about in the article how that kind of helped onboard the new hire Zachary Haynes. So it's cool to see now just a full on dedicated person in that position, and just a continuation of the work that they're doing over there in the film department. It's we're journalism majors. We basically live in the Media Arts Center along with the Equinox office, but these are people that we interact with on a semi-frequent basis from our neighboring majors. So that's cool to see. And then also the graphic design adjunct faculty has a pretty cool backstory in terms of previous work with MTV, and also as like a puppeteer. I mean, it's kind of cool when I think you can bring on people to teach courses that might not have the traditional like background in like having like a master's or something in education, but someone who has some experience just professionally and is able to deliver that to students. So yeah, great piece here.
I agree completely. I think it's always great to see more new faces on campus, especially people who are very dedicated to what they're doing. And as you spoke to, the film department is very close with us as a journalism department. And I think just getting more people in there and getting more attention to it is always great. We work very closely with them, and we understand basically living in the Media Arts Center. And so I think it's great that they're taking up these positions.
Yeah, and shout out to our staff writer Emily Sloan for doing that article as well, and some good photos from our social media director Elena. Um, to end things off here, going to sports, the fall sports preview, and this is an article that we usually do every year to just start things off. How are the fall sports teams feeling going into their seasons? I mean, there's a lot of training and stuff that happens over the summer as well, but sort of looking at the variety of teams, you have ones such as the field hockey team, which are reigning LEC champions, who are sort of looking to just continue that success going into this season, and then you have other teams that might not have had the best record in the past season or the past few years, but now are sort of looking to rebound and prove that, basically just prove themselves on the field or otherwise. So really interesting stuff and a lot of insight into sort of the teams, how they're feeling, and the mentality going into it, especially from also the coach's perspective of, there's new crops of first years. How does that play in? How does it play into the fact that, there's some seniors that departed, new leadership in some cases with captains and such. And so, yeah, very, very insightful stuff and covering a lot of bases. This one was a very well-sourced piece from our sports editor, Jacob, who really covered all the bases of the sports. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think definitely as a Division 3 school, we have our sports teams who work so hard to put so much effort into things that aren't always given the most appreciation. So I think actually calling out their achievements, seeing their perspectives on things is always great because you have these athletes who might not be getting as big scholarships as Division 1 athletes. So it's really great to see them pushing forward and to see these teams doing such great things with what they're given.
Definitely. Well, that's been your Equinox news recap for the week. Thanks to everybody for tuning in on audio or video. Just a reminder, we're streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean. We're on YouTube as always. So check out our streaming on the various platforms. We also have a link in our social media if you want to check out alternative ways to listen and tune in and get the campus news for the week. I would like to extend a special shout out to the composer of the music for Noxcast, our very own Equinox alum, Zach Keenan. I also wanted to say thank you to our editor of Noxcast, who is our webmaster, Charlotte, for now. So thank you. And a final thank you to the designer of the graphic for Noxcast, our very own art director, Elijah Fisher. Thanks for watching. I've been Nathan Erno.